Northamptonshire County Council has warned that services for vulnerable children and adults could no longer be protected. They're poised to introduce drastic measures to survive a financial crisis they describe as without parallel in modern times. This, remember, is a Conservative county council describing a country which has been under Conservative governance for 8 years. Again, you know, those moments where I sit here and say, what the hell has happened to our country? A Conservative-run county council describing a financial crisis without parallel in modern times after 8 years of a Conservative Prime Minister inhabiting number 10 Downing Street. Just pinch me, will you? And it gets worse, because the council's already technically insolvent. And oddly enough, we move from Northamptonshire to where the bankruptcy is in place to the county where it's suggested could be next, and that's Somerset, Taunton specifically, where Mike has called from. Mike, what can you tell us?
Morning, James.
Hello, mate.
I read this morning that the report that came out, and let me just read you one key sentence from that, and that is that Northamptonshire in recent years aspired to be a poster child for a distinctively conservative approach to local government, priding itself on having one of the lowest levels of council tax, then freezing council tax, and adopting a radical plan to outsource services.
Right.
Now, those words could have been written about Somerset, which is why we're in not necessarily the same boat, but we're headed in the same direction.
And it's why I perhaps am not barking up the wrong tree when I talk about ideology.
No, absolutely. It's entirely ideological, because what's happened here in Somerset, I mean, just to take you back a step or two, if we think about how local government was funded about 10 years ago, typically 75% of the money for a council came from central government, 25% was raised locally through council tax and local fees. What we've seen over the last 8 or 9 years is that most of that 75% has disappeared, and it will all disappear in a couple of years. So what we're left with is the money that we can raise locally. So it's a massive hit to the budget. But, you know, clever people in local authorities have found ways of doing things more creatively. Some of those have had some bad impacts, but some of them have worked quite well. So we're in the context of central government massively cutting local government funding. But local government isn't, you know, blameless in this. If you look at Somerset, for example, the council here chose, wrongly in my view, to freeze council tax through most of the early 2000s.
And they didn't have to do that?
They didn't have to do that. And now, having done that, we find ourselves in Somerset £29 million a year worse off. We wouldn't be in the sort of difficulty that we are. And it's so bad here that the Conservative chair and vice chair of the audit committee resigned last week. They resigned their positions, and then they resigned from the Conservative group.
I mean, this is almost, forgive me, it's almost funny. Because what you describe is so blatantly bad.
It's so predictable. It's so predictable.
So they froze council tax, well, presumably, and they do that to win power.
It's a short-term electoral gain, absolutely.
And then they turn around after a couple of years, not even decades, and go, oh, we've run out of money.
Yeah, that's exactly where we are now here in Somerset.
Doff cap, tug forelock. Who's your local MP?
Our local MP is Rebecca Powell.
Oh, rats, you spoiled my punchline. I'm too far south in the county, aren't I? Vote Rees.
Yes, probably. No,
well, can't Jacob Gallop to the rescue? And he could probably bail out the council with all the money he's going to make from his new funds in Dublin after Brexit, couldn't he?
There has been a similar view in Somerset, as you mentioned in Northamptonshire, that there have apparently, we've not really seen much evidence of it, but the Conservative administration here has been lobbying central government for a better funding formula or more money. Either they haven't been doing it and they've just said that for public consumption, or they're really bad at it because we've got precisely nothing out of it, like Northamptonshire, and hence why we find ourselves in this problem. And to continue on your idea of ideology,
yes,
it's the outsourcing thing again is killing us.
Read me that line again, because I need to burn it into my consciousness.
Yeah, so it's Northamptonshire in recent years aspired to be a poster child for a distinctively conservative approach to local government, priding itself on having one of the lowest levels of council tax, then freezing council tax and adopting a radical plan to outsource services. So here we had a back office outsourcing function to do all the things like HR and finance, and we now find ourselves in Somerset £70 million worse off for having done that deal. If we'd not done it and we'd kept those services in-house, we'd be £70 million better off today than we are. There was no need to do that. It's just pure ideology. It's the idea that public is bad, private is good, get it all out. Shrink down the county council to a tiny little core of commissioners handing out contracts on a periodic basis, and it hasn't worked. And we're still doing it. The council here is still doing it. They've just outsourced 1,200 people to run learning disabilities in Somerset. So
which means somebody somewhere is making a profit out of something that previously nobody made a profit out of.
Absolutely right. And what's now happening is the only way they can balance the books, because someone's got to make some money out of it, is by limiting the amount of time that each of those people that the service serves get from the people that have helped them for all these years. So they're slimming down on the amount of time.
Do you know, there have been times over the last few years where I've wondered whether I was turning into David Icke, Mike. I sort of thought, I keep seeing these things and wondering why other people can't see them and what's going on and what's this. So David Icke, incidentally, has come out in support of Jeremy Corbyn's position on anti-Semitism. But it's all happening. It's happening under our noses. It's frog boiling.
It is. Well, I think you'd look great in a turquoise tracksuit, by the way.
11:48 is the time.